Hello, my name is Andrea Diaz-Barrera. I'm with Jessica Garcia and Estela Cantu. Um, Other members of our team include Elizabeth Hernandez Elizondo, Rain Rueda, and Alan Villarreal. Today we'll be talking about employee relations and the manager in healthcare. Okay, to begin with employee relations and the manager in healthcare, just some points that we're going to talk about today are employee participation and input, people-centered manager, manager visibility and availability, essential downward orientation, essential individual relationships, employee training, performance appraisals, managers and employee problems. Okay, so to begin with, employee participation and input. This is a really big um, factor when it comes to relationships between managers and employees. So, just some points I wanted to bring up. Although employee participation and feedback is encouraged, the implementation of suggested feedback is rare due to the fact that the manager who is the expert and not the employee. What I mean by this is you always hear about, yes, we want employee feedback, we want that, just their knowledge, they're the frontline employee. However, when it comes to actually implementing or possibly using their ideas, the feedback is never utilized because management doesn't feel they are experts in the field that they are working in. This leads me to my next point. Authoritarianism in management is weakening but is not completely gone. So we still have that authoritarian uh, regime, I guess you could say, still taking place in the workforce. It is breaking down with people being more vocal. However, that is still there and it is not completely gone. But as employees become more vocal, work with HR, and more managers are more open to ideas, this is actually diminishing. Another point to bring up is managers who request frontline employee input and feedback seriously consider them in decisions and who have historically been more successful due to their firsthand knowledge. The frontline employees are actually the first people who know exactly what's going on. They're going to be able to tell you what's working, what's not working. Management is there to oversee what's going on, so they're not really in the trenches as the frontline employees are. So it is always good to get that information from the frontline employees, maybe make modifications, maybe help groom them, and acknowledge them for advising and providing this feedback. This builds trust, this builds loyalty, and you end up creating and grooming a long-term career-oriented employee. And my last point on this particular subject is employees who are encouraged to participate will appreciate the value and consideration, which will result in higher morale and improvement in employee loyalty. Like I mentioned earlier, it will just create better relationships. People will be happy. When employees are happier, productivity increases, and therefore, in the end, it produces higher profitability. Okay, now the people-centered manager. Healthcare organizations need people-centered management where a manager's main focus is on the people. Employees must maintain productivity levels and control progression. Willingness of employees to work is key to productivity. Responsibilities of employees vary, and each situation is unique, which makes planning productivity levels a challenge. Now, this is always going to be the case no matter which work environment you work in. People have different skills and different levels of skills. It is the duty and the responsibility of management to tap into each and every person's talent and use those talents. Maybe some person isn't good with technology, but they're good with people relations. Well, groom them so that they can work with the public and provide those relationships with the community, especially in healthcare. This works great to encourage people to utilize certain healthcare facilities based on customer service, based on patient satisfaction. Those who are great with technology, those are the ones who are going to help provide ideas for technology and how to implement technology in the healthcare system to make business and healthcare more efficient.
And next we have the manager visibility and availability. A healthcare department supervisor must be generally visible to employees and must be both perceived as available and actually available. And in the healthcare, as well as many other professions, perception becomes reality. So it is important for a manager to maintain visibility, to have the appearance of being open and available to listen to employee issues and show concern. In this regard, managers should lead by example. The perception of a manager, an employee's perception of a manager directly correlates with their perception of the organization. So if an employee has ill feelings towards a manager, it tends to overshadow their impression of the entire organization. So it's key in order to keep your employees happy and productive and reduce turnover for a manager, at the first line, to give a great perception of being open and listening to their employees. The managers should be the liaison between the organization and their employees, especially with upper management, and they should strive to have their actions match their words. Many managers talk about having an open door policy. It's important to also have the action of having an open door policy. Employees pick up on things very quickly. So if you say my door is always open, but it's not, they will pick up on that quickly, and that can lead to resentment and then decrease productivity. And managers should portray an attitude of helpfulness and a willingness to listen to all employees. So in general, it's just a manager should make sure that they're out open and available to all of their employees.
Okay, so in this slide we have the essential downward orientation. The concept of downward and upward orientation is the perception of whether a manager or supervisor is oriented towards their subordinates or up towards their superiors in the organizational structure. The natural inclination to look towards our superior is strong. It is there that one finds resources, praise, and visibility, which leads to potential promotions. Additionally, one's superiors provide us with feelings of self-worth and validity. However, as strong and as rewarding the inclination may be, managers and superiors must always focus on leading subordinates. For it is in leading subordinates that the manager or supervisor position flourishes. In other words, leading employees is the manager's primary responsibility. Managers are vital as they lead, guide, and inspire. They are also critical in employees' career development. Managers who are downward oriented will eventually gain worthwhile experience and knowledge. In addition, managers will mature in their position and gain respect. Employees will then perceive the manager as an advocate, a leader, a member of their group, rather than someone who is only looking out for himself and only looking to move up. When a manager is perceived as an advocate rather than just a member of management, then employees are more motivated to produce. For this reason, it is essential that a manager focuses on being oriented downward. Essential individual relationships. It is important for managers to lead by walking around. Only when a manager is in the employee's territory will they know and understand the employee's point of view on matters concerning resources, workload distribution, morale, etc. In addition, leading by walking around promotes good communication. Further, communication is key in forming relationships with each individual employee. Therefore, it is best practice to meet with each employee periodically. There are several reasons why open communication is vital to each employee-manager relationship. First, the practice will ensure steady performance and therefore effective productivity. Second, it will assure employees that they are not being overlooked. For example, there are exceptional employees who, although noticed, do not consume too much of the manager's time. Then there are the troublesome employees who consume both the manager's time and their attention. Finally, there are those who get ignored by the manager because they are quiet and perform acceptable work. In order to discuss any perceived complaints or forthcoming problems, it is important for the manager to be employee-centered and keep a downward orientation so that they will know who needs more motivation and who can take on more responsibility or promotions.
Employee training. The manager's role in employee training, here are some points to discuss. New employee orientation, maintaining and improving capability and competence of their staff. The manager is a teacher. With proper encouragement and assistance, the person who knows best how to perform given tasks can be the best resource for teaching tasks to others. External requirements. Different accreditations, regulatory agencies assess the training and activities during their periodic surveys. New employee orientations. This is prepared by Human Resources Department and should provide an introduction to the organization. So I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about each of these points. The manager's role, as discussed. The manager does need to be part of the employee's orientation. This also helps the start of building that trust and relationship between the employee and the management. It also, as discussed, it provides and improves the capability and competence of their staff. So this will, the manager can gauge what kind of skill set their employee has. This also allows the employee to understand the standards and expectation of their manager. The manager is there to teach. If there is something that needs to be taught because this is a new employee, the manager needs to know these areas of opportunity in order to implement these trainings, these teachings, and groom this employee to thrive in this organization. Now, outside agencies provide regulations so that and assess the training and activities so that we ensure that there is no bias, we ensure that there is no favoritism going on. Through this practice, the company is monitored so that we ensure that the proper training is being given. If there is ever a separation between the employee and the organization does not want to have to pay be involved in any lawsuits or be involved in having to pay for unemployment if the employer can prove that they have provided all possible trainings, they have gone above and beyond. Sometimes this can be reasons for having outside agencies verify and ensure that they are properly providing the tools and trainings necessary for all of their employees. Now, again, employee orientation is the first step. This is where you set the standard. This is where you provide all of the information of the expectations of both the organization and the employee. Okay, to continue a little bit further. Training to correct performance problems. There's always going to be those people that have issues with performance. Now, this could be because of a personal nature. This could be because of things are going on at work. Training must be a high priority for every manager. Managers may have to be teachers when helping employees correct performance problems. Now, also, we need to determine the departmental learning needs. Employees learn better when they are actually become involved in the process. It's one thing to give an employee a pamphlet, a booklet, or paperwork and say, read this and make sure you know it. Hands-on learning and while doing their job, on-the-job training, practice sessions, live sessions, these are actually more effective than PowerPoints, handouts, books, manuals, because nobody's going to memorize a whole book or a whole pamphlet. On-the-job training, hands-on learning is the best way to discover, not only for the manager, but for the employee to realize, okay, maybe I need more help in this area, and therefore they can work with their manager to become better employees. Other needs is to teach materials that applies to their daily work. It's one thing to give an overall perspective of the company and the goals of the company or the organization, but there should not be a whole lot of time spent on things that management and administration do when that is not part of the routine daily work of the frontline employee. New materials, techniques, processes are best presented within the context of a department mission. So customize it. create this culture that works, especially specifically for the department or specifically for the role that that employee is working with. By doing so, they feel important, they feel as they are contributing to the success of the organization. Sometimes it is necessary to cross-train in order to be better efficient. Managers must ensure that employees are able to be moved around. Now, we can look at this from two perspectives. One cannot be a master of multiple different types of roles. So cross-training can be a good or bad thing. Cross-training maybe in one or two areas may be good, but I really wouldn't suggest cross-training in 5 or 6 or 7 different roles, as training cannot be mastered for one single employee. So again, just find out what that person's needs are, develop those needs now, their talents, work on their talents, groom those talents, and help them improve in those areas so that they can move up and become career-oriented employees for your organization.
Another topic that we will discuss is performance appraisals. Performance appraisals are very important. In healthcare organizations, they are a mandate for many healthcare organizations to remain accredited and to regulate their healthcare facilities. Performance appraisals are also very beneficial for the employee as well as the employer. It's a great opportunity for employers to provide feedback on an employee's performance to ensure that they're meeting expectations, that they are aware of their job responsibilities, and it's also a way for employees to gauge their growth in a job. If there's issues where they maybe need some improvement, this is the way that managers can discuss this with employees. And when they do this, managers should make sure that they base the performance appraisals on what an employee does rather than on what an employee is or knows. So they really need to make sure that they base it on the job description and the responsibilities for that particular job that the employee performs at the organization. During a performance appraisal, an interview is done to provide feedback to the employee, and this interview should be done very professionally, very similarly to the way that you would do a job interview. A manager needs to make sure that they are on time, that they're professional, and if there are any issues going on with their employee, that they really focus on the source, not really what caused it, and ways that they can improve and make sure that the employee does meet expectations in the future. And individual appraisals have shown to be more beneficial than self-appraisals or team appraisals. It's individualized, and the employee can learn more from that, knowing what it is that they need to do in the future if there are any issues, or be given credit for a good job that they have been doing at the organization. And when performance appraisals have been done, it's important for the form to be kept for record. And a manager should make sure that the employee signs their performance appraisal, as well as they need to give them a copy of the performance appraisal. They should make 3 copies. It should be one for the employee, one for themselves, and they should also route one to HR to keep in the employee's record. We will also discuss the manager and employee problems. There are problems that inevitably will always occur in an organization, and many times the causes of employee problems can be related to the job, or they can also be related to personal problems or experiences that the employee is having. The different types of problems that managers will face are performance problems and behavior problems. Performance problems are issues when an employee is not meeting the minimum requirements of a job. For some reason, they're maybe not grasping a concept of their position. And so in this case, there's a performance problem, and they should make sure that there is some sort of action plan that's created so that they can overcome whatever issue it is. Maybe it's training that they need to have in order for them to bring up their performance to meet expectations. There's also behavior problems, and behavior problems are more in the case where maybe an employee just does not want to do the job, they have a bad attitude about something, they're having the behavior is they just refuse to do maybe some part of their job, and this sometimes more often will lead to disciplinary action because this is a behavior that they're expressing as opposed to not being able to perform their job. So it's important for a manager to be alert for signs of problems and to address them as soon as possible. They need to make sure that it does not progress further, that if they do not address it as soon as they become aware of the issue, the employee may not know that somebody considers this to be a problem, and so then when they do address it, it could grow into something even bigger when it could have been handled right in the beginning. So it's very important that it's addressed immediately. An effective manager will also keep track of employee attendance to prevent employee absenteeism. Absenteeism can be very costly for organizations, so it's essential that they make sure that their employees are coming to work every day and make sure that they're aware of the policies that the organization has regarding absenteeism. If a problem is not resolved by an employee, it will result in termination of the employee. Of course, this would be the very last step after going through processes to make sure that it's been tried to be corrected, and in which case you would follow your employee policies and your procedures, and the manager should work with the HR department. If they suspect that it's moving towards termination, they should make sure that whenever they meet with the employee, that they document every instance that they've spoken to the employee, that they also keep a copy of it, make sure that they have a trail, I guess, of exactly what occurred at each stage and how the employee was disciplined, how they were giving opportunities to improve their behavior or their performance, and make sure that all of this is kept on an employee's file in case it should happen to lead to legal action in the future, that they have everything filed correctly and that they've consistently recorded everything that happened. A manager should also provide employees with information and education to prevent these problems. So it's important that they provide training to all employees on any issues that could arise in an organization. And again, they always need to have documentation of any employee problems that can be kept in their file with HR.
In conclusion, strong manager-employee relationships are crucial in a workplace to guarantee loyal and successful business culture. This encourages trust between management and frontline employees. With that being said, expectations from the employee should be made clear to think outside the box when looking for opportunities and promotions. Open door policy should be practiced and part of the company culture. The long-term effect will produce career-oriented employees who will stay loyal to the organization and increase profits over an extended period of time. Responsibilities not only include awareness of employees who perform at high standard, but to properly manage those who show areas of opportunity, whether it be personal or skill related. Continuing on-the-go job training is vital to grooming employees for further leadership positions.
Okay. We'd like to thank you for taking time to watch this video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.